Is it really only 10 Hail Marys for murder? A common claim surrounding Catholic confession, particularly in the context of organized crime, is that murder can be absolved with a mere recitation of 10 Hail Marys. While this notion has circulated in mafia lore, the reality of Catholic penitential practices is far more complex. In Catholic teaching, confession or the sacrament of reconciliation requires sincere contrition, the verbal acknowledgement of one's sins, and an act of penance assigned by the priest. The severity of the sin dictates the depth of the penance. Murder, classified as a mortal sin, necessitates profound repentance, often including acts beyond prayer such as restitution, moral reform, and deep spiritual reflection. Historically, some priests, particularly in mafia-controlled regions, may have given lenient penances to criminals, either out of fear or complicity. In such cases, the sacrament became more about maintaining relationships than enforcing genuine moral accountability. However, this does not represent official Catholic doctrine, which insists that absolution requires true remorse and a commitment to change. The myth of 10 Hail Marys for murder likely stems from cases where priests issued disproportionately light penances in crime-ridden communities. Yet in proper Catholic practice, absolution is not a transaction. It demands the sinner's sincere effort to seek moral reform. Throughout history, religious institutions have served as both moral authorities and, at times, unwitting or willing accomplices to criminal enterprises. Clergy have found themselves on opposing sides of the law, some using their influence to resist corruption, while others have exploited their positions to enable crime. Clergy who enabled criminal activity: Father Richard Brinkley and Prohibition-era bootlegging during Prohibition in the United States, 1900–1933. The demand for illegal liquor fostered deep connections between organized crime and various institutions. Father Richard Brinkley, a Catholic priest in Chicago, allegedly used his parish connections to facilitate the smuggling of alcohol, offering sanctuary to bootleggers in exchange for financial support for his Porting-Fernane church. His role highlights the complicated morality of clergy caught between economic survival and ethical compromise. Cardinal Marcinkus and the Vatican banking scandal. One of the most significant cases of clerical involvement in financial crime was Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, who led the Vatican Bank in the Emperor's 1970s and 1980s. Under his leadership, the bank became entangled with Italian organized crime, including the infamous Banco Ambrosiano collapse, which resulted in fraudulent transactions and money laundering allegations. Marcinkus escaped prosecution due to Vatican immunity, but his financial dealings left a lasting stain on the church's reputation. Father Patrick Maloney and the Brinks heist. Father Patrick Maloney, a Catholic priest in New York, was convicted of aiding criminals involved in a $7 million Brinks armored truck robbery in Pret, 1981. He was accused of sheltering fugitives and laundering stolen money through his parish. Maloney claimed he was helping poor parishioners, yet his actions demonstrated how religious figures could be drawn into criminal networks under the guise of charity. Clergy who resisted criminal activity. Father Giuseppe Puglisi versus the Sicilian Mafia in Sicily, where the mafia held considerable power. Father Giuseppe Pino Puglisi stood against organized crime and As a priest in the rough neighborhood of Brancaccio, Palermo, he openly challenged the mafia's influence over local youth, urging them to reject a life of crime. In 1993, Puglisi was assassinated by mafia hitmen, cementing his legacy as a martyr for justice. Archbishop Oscar Romero and El Salvador's death squads during El Salvador's brutal civil war, 1979–1992. Archbishop Oscar Romero became an outspoken critic of government-backed death squads responsible for atrocities. He used his sermons to denounce violence and called for justice, knowing he was making himself a target. In 1980, Romero was assassinated while giving Mass, a moment that galvanized human rights movements worldwide. Father Pedro Opeka and the fight against poverty in Madagascar, where corruption often fuels organized crime. Father Pedro Opeka dedicated his life to breaking cycles of poverty and exploitation. He founded Akamasoa, a community providing housing, education, and employment to thousands. His resistance against local criminal elements, including corrupt officials and traffickers, demonstrates how clergy can fight crime through grassroots reform. Conclusion: the involvement of clergy in criminal activity, whether as enablers or resistors, underscores the complex interplay between faith, morality, and power. While some clerics have succumbed to corruption, others have courageously opposed criminal forces at great personal risk. These stories remind us that religious institutions are not immune to ethical dilemmas, and the choices made by individuals within them shape their legacy.